Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Torah studies class for the Torah portion of Shemini. Now, we just concluded the holiday of Pesach. Now, the holiday of Pesach has certain parts that we really, really like, and there's certain parts of Pesach that we probably find a little bit more challenging and a little bit more difficult. But this doesn't apply only to the holiday of Pesach. This applies to so many elements of Judaism. There are things that we love. There are things that we enjoy because they provide for us direction in life. They bring us together with the community. They provide beautiful family traditions. Family comes together, we pass them down from generation to generation. They make us happy. They provide meaning and purpose in life. But then there are other parts of Judaism that perhaps we don't get as much out of when we don't enjoy them as much. Sometimes there are things in Judaism that are hard. There's a lot of rules and regulations, and often there's a lot of no's. There are parts of Judaism that can be very expensive. It's very expensive to make Pesach. It can be more expensive to keep kosher. It's certainly more expensive to send your kids to Jewish schools. To be Jewish could require lifestyle changes that are a little bit uncomfortable. There are certain parts, certain mitzvahs that you just don't understand them. They might seem a little crazy to you, and quite frankly, you might not see the point and you don't understand why we need to do them to begin with. Now, this is very subjective. What one person loves, another person might not be able to understand. For one person, fasting on Yom Kippur is the most meaningful spiritual experience to be in the shul for an entire day, praying, fasting, holding the machzor, listening to the chazan. There's nothing better. There's nothing more Jewish. For another person, fasting can be the most painful and difficult experience, and it's torture. Everyone has their own approach. The question is, how do we deal with those elements in Judaism, whatever they are for each person, that we don't love, right? How do we deal with the parts of Judaism that we find to be a challenge? Now, for some people, they just don't do it. They say, listen, I'm a proud Jew. I do as much as I can, but this mitzvah, this piece of halacha, this piece of tradition, I just don't get anything out of it. It's too challenging for me, and it's just not going to be part of my Jewish experience. There are other people who say, no, that's not my approach. I may not like it, I may not enjoy it, right? I may not find it to being that meaningful, but my relationship with Judaism is I'm all in, it's a package deal. I may not like it, I may not enjoy it, but I will do it, and I'm going to accept it. Now, what's interesting is that these two personalities, the one who says I'm not going to do it, and the one who says I will do it, I'm going to accept it, at the end of the day, they essentially have the same relationship with that mitzvah. They have that same emotional reaction to that mitzvah. They don't like it, right? They're not happy with it. The only difference is one will do it and one won't do it. So the question that we want to address today is, can we learn to love the parts of Judaism we find unappealing without losing ourselves in the process, without having to just shut off a part of our own identity to submit to the mitzvah? Is there a way that we could actually learn to love the parts of Judaism that we find unappealing? Now, in a way, to a certain degree, Judaism, if not endorses the idea of picking and choosing which mitzvahs we're going to perform, definitely recognizes the concept and the idea of picking and choosing which mitzvah you're going to perform. Now, the Torah tells us that there are two different types of mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs that are called mitzvahs aseh, which are action-oriented mitzvahs or active mitzvahs, commands we're told to do something. And there are mitzvahs that are lo saseh, or you could say mitzvahs which are passive commands, which we fulfill those mitzvahs by refraining from doing something. Now, what is it that motivates us to do the action-oriented mitzvahs versus the mitzvahs that are kind of more passive? So Jewish tradition teaches, and it's quite logical, that what motivates us to do the action-oriented mitzvahs is love. When it comes to an opportunity to do a mitzvah, like, for example, to make a seder, We love to join. We love to participate. We love to do it. Family comes over. We're singing various songs, asking questions. There's answers. The kids get involved. There's wonderful and delicious foods. There are so many great traditions, lasting memories. Why do we do certain mitzvahs? They're motivated by love. It feels great. It's wonderful to do an action-oriented mitzvah. But what about what motivates us when it comes to doing the mitzvahs that are passively observed, where we refrain from doing an action? Like, for example, not eating any chametz on Pesach. That's not necessarily motivated by love. You could say it's motivated by fear, or more accurately, it's motivated by a healthy respect and awe for what the Torah wants from us. Due to our healthy respect and awe for the Torah, therefore we refrain from eating the chametz. Now, when it comes to these two mitzvahs, Jewish law actually says that when there is a conflict between the observance of an action-oriented mitzvah or a passive mitzvah, we actually favor the action-oriented mitzvah. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. The Torah says that when a baby boy is born, on the 8th day, we have to fulfill the critical mitzvah of circumcision. The child is going to enter into the covenant of Abraham, our patriarch. The circumcision must take place on the 8th day. However, on Shabbos, it is prohibited to do a circumcision. It's prohibited to cause a wound, to perform a surgical procedure like that on a child. So what do? On the one hand, the Torah tells us it's the 8th day, and on the 8th day, we have to engage in this beautiful mitzvah. On the other hand, the Torah tells us on Shabbos, we must refrain. We must be passive when it comes to certain activities. So text number 1, we have the Talmud, tractate Shabbos. Reish Lakish said, in a situation where an active and passive mitzvah coincide, if it's possible to fulfill both, that is ideal. If not, let the active mitzvah override the passive mitzvah. In the case of a bris, the active mitzvah of performing the circumcision overrides the passive mitzvah of refraining from doing surgical type procedures on Shabbos. And therefore, if the 8th day, since the baby was born, is on Shabbos, the positive action-oriented mitzvah wins, it rules the day, and it overrides the passive mitzvah. Now, why? Right? What's the logic? Why should an action-oriented mitzvah override the restrictions of a passive mitzvah? Many different answers are proposed. But I want to suggest one that fits in with the theme that we're talking about today. The reason that an action-oriented mitzvah overrides the passive one, because an action-oriented mitzvah, not only is it motivated by love, but it results in a deeper and more stronger relationship between the Jewish person and God. It is only natural that when you do something for someone, it brings you closer to that person. Therefore, when you do the mitzvah, you go through the ritual, when you experience the sanctity of the act of that bris, that circumcision, it causes you to feel closer and more connected to Hashem. However, the act of simply refraining, merely avoiding doing a particular activity, yes, it's a result of respect and awe of God, but it doesn't necessarily lead to any more concrete or tangible closeness or affection to God. So therefore, the Torah says it's the action-oriented mitzvah that overrides the passive mitzvah. This seems to apply, or really it affirms the idea that there are simply some mitzvahs that we like more because we gain more out of it. Therefore, when there's a conflict between the observance of a positive and a negative mitzvah, the positive mitzvah overrides. So Judaism recognizes that some mitzvahs can be more satisfying than others. How can we learn to appreciate all godly directives, not just the ones that we like? So let's turn to this week's Torah portion for an answer. So for the past many weeks, we've been discussing the construction of the Mishkan. The Mishkan is going to be a portable temple, a sanctuary from God, for God, a home for God, a place where the Jewish people are able to go to and have a tangible experience, a most concrete relationship and connection with God. It is constructed. There is an 8-day inaugural process. And on the 8th day, the final day, we read that and Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. Then they came out and blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. This is a great success. The purpose that the building which was built is now being fulfilled. God's presence is revealed. God's presence is manifested, and it is resting in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, with the Jewish people built. But this was not just the inauguration of some new shul, some new synagogue, or a Jewish institution. Look how the Talmud describes this in text number 4. And it came to pass on the 8th day, it is taught in a brisa, a tradition in the Jewish oral law not incorporated in the Mishnah. On that day, there was joy before the Holy One, blessed be He, similar to the joy that existed on the day on which the heavens and earth were created. The inauguration of the Mishkan was almost a rebirth of the world itself. The world is now able to fulfill the purpose for which it was created by having a Mishkan. The Mishkan is the first prototype for God's permanent presence, and our mission in this world was complete. God and the Jewish people's shared joy was unimaginable. The excitement that the process for which the world was created is now able to be accomplished. We can begin it in this world in the most real and true way. We now have a Mishkan. We have a home for God in this world. The celebration was absolutely out of this world. However, unfortunately, right, amidst all of the great excitement, a very sad event took place. Aaron, the brother of Moshe, is the Kohen Gadol. He's the high priest. 2 of his sons, Nadav and Avihu, they approach and enter the Holy of Holies in the Mishkan. They desire to bring a sacrifice to God, and they pass away. Text number 5a from this week's Parsha. And Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his pan, put fire in it, and placed incense upon it, and they brought before God foreign fire, which he had not commanded them. And fire went forth from before God and consumed them, and they died before God. Now, I want to set aside the question of what it is exactly that they did wrong, and why is it that they were worthy of death. Commentators address this question, they ask the question, they answer the question. I want to deal with a very practical question. What do you do? We are in the middle of the inauguration ceremony for the Mishkan. All the Jewish people are gathered together. It is a national celebration. There is joy like you cannot possibly imagine and describe surrounding the inauguration of the temple. But Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron the Kohen, the nephews of Moshe, are lying dead in the Holy of Holies. Who is available to remove them from the Holy of Holies? Who is available to take them out and to bury them? The Torah tells us in text 5b, and Moshe summoned Mishal and Elzaphan, the sons of Aaron's uncle Uziel, in other words, the first cousins of Aaron and Moshe, and said to them, draw near, carry your kinsmen from within the sanctuary to the outside of the camp. So they approached and carried them with their tunics to the outside of the camp. Now the Torah makes a point to tell us exactly who were the people that took out Nadav and Avihu and buried them. It was Mishal and Elzaphan. They were the cousins of Aaron and Moshe. Now they were Levites, right? They were Levian. Why were Levites chosen to bury Nadav and Avihu, and relatives no less? were there not anyone else who might have been available to take care of the needs of Nadav and Avihu, that Leviim that were related to Nadav and Avihu had to be the one to do the job? Didn't they especially have a very personal connection with the celebration of the day? They were celebrating the inauguration of the Mishkan. Who works in the Mishkan? Who serves in the Mishkan? Who allows the Mishkan to function? The Kohanim, and of course, the Levites. The Levites play an integral role in the service of the Mishkan. You would think that the inauguration of the Mishkan would be a uniquely special day for the Levites, that they would not want to be disturbed for any reason. The inauguration is so deeply connected to the role that the Levites play, that it seems strange that they would be taken away, that they would be removed from the inauguration to take care of the task of burying their cousins, Nadav and Avihu. What went into this decision? When, when it came to choose who is going to bury Nadav and Avihu, Moshe was faced with this choice. What should be the focus of this bittersweet day, the 8th day of the inauguration of the Mishkan? Should it be grief at having lost 2 righteous souls? Should the Jewish people find out? Should they know, should they become aware that the 2 sons of their beloved Kohen Gadol Aaron are dead? Should Moshe allow that grief to touch and affect the Jewish people and ultimately impact the celebration of the inauguration of the Mishkan? Or should Moshe preserve the festivities and the joy of the moment, be discreet, and allow 2 relatives, 2 Levites, to come into the Mishkan, remove the bodies, and to bury them without impacting the rest of the day? Moshe chose the latter option. Moshe chose to be discreet. He did not want to disturb the national celebration that was taking place at that time. He wanted the focus to be on the Mishkan. This does not mean that Nadav and Avihu were not mourned. They certainly were, but only after the national celebration took place. Now, who is best to do the job? If you need to get some people to discreetly remove the bodies of Nadav and Avihu from the temple in order not to disturb the inauguration of the temple, who would be ideal to do it? The answer is Levites. Why? Because removing the bodies was about preserving the joyous atmosphere and maintaining focus on the Mishkan. Whose job is it to preserve the integrity of the Mishkan? It's the Levites. Part of the Levites' job in the Mishkan is to preserve its physical integrity, its spiritual integrity, which absolutely would include preserving the joyous atmosphere and maintaining focus on the Mishkan. Therefore, it makes the most sense for Levites to be the one to do the job of burying the body. However, a person can argue that when it comes to jobs that are related to preserving the joyous atmosphere and the integrity that surrounds the Mishkan, that Mishal and Al-Safwan got the short end of the stick. When it comes to preserving the integrity of the Mishkan, job number 1 could be singing, playing instruments, offering sacrifices as part of the inauguration ceremony. Or your job could be to preserve the integrity of the Mishkan by discreetly removing the bodies of Nadav and Avihu from the sanctuary and burying them on the side. Which of those jobs would you prefer? It would certainly appear that they got the short end of the stick. What could possibly have made them feel good as they were burying their cousins while everyone else celebrated? How do you think Mishal and Otzafan felt that yes, they're doing something that's valuable, but at the end of the day, all of the rest of the Jewish people and all of their brothers and cousin Levites are in the midst of celebrating and singing and rejoicing in the inauguration of the Mishkan, while they're off doing another job. They probably felt just like us when it comes to doing mitzvahs that we're not so excited about. Everyone's excited to read the Manashtana at the Seder. Everyone's excited to drink the 4 cups of wine. Everyone is excited to eat the meal at the Seder. But who's excited to clean the house for Pesach? Who's excited to clean and to mop and to wipe and to kosher and to cover? Who's excited about that? No one's excited about that. How can we appreciate the prosaic parts of being Jewish? How did Mishal and Otzafan do it then? And how can we learn from them and make sure that we're able to do it today as well? The answer, of course, is it's all about how you look at whatever it is that you're doing. When you look at something in the small scale, from your own individual personal perspective at the moment, all that you see or all that you might see is not a very pleasant job. From the personal perspective, looking at the small picture of Mishal and Otzafan, they had an unpleasant job of removing and burying bodies while everyone else is partying. However, if you step back a little bit and don't look at it from the personal perspective, but you look at it from a bigger picture perspective, what was Mishal and Otzafan doing? They, in the most literal sense, saved the day. Without them discreetly taking out Nadav and Avihu, the party's over, the party's dead, it's gone, and a period of national mourning is going to develop instead of a national celebration. What they were doing was absolutely less fun than what their fellow Levites were doing, but not only was it as meaningful, you can argue it was perhaps even more meaningful, because without them, there is no party. They literally allowed for a national celebration to take place. So it's all about putting the experience in the proper context and the proper perspective. Would you be excited to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, to drive across town and change a tire? You would not. That's not fun. That's not exciting. That's not enjoyable. It's tiring. It's frustrating. You're going to lose sleep, time, and energy. However, there are people who actually volunteer to do this. In New York and in some larger Jewish communities, there's an organization that's called Chaverim. They're volunteers to help out people in need any time of the day, any circumstance. If a person gets a flat tire at 3 o'clock in the morning, with the joy and happiness, they run to be able to change that tire. Why are they doing it? Because they value the importance of the job. Is it fun to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning? No. Is it enjoyable to slap across town while you're dead tired? No. But you know that if there's a person who, for whatever reason, had to be driving at 3 o'clock in the morning and got stuck across town with a flat tire, the value that you bring to them by changing that tire, by being for them at that time at 3 o'clock in the morning and helping them, that is worth it and much more for these Jews to volunteer to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do that. When you realize the meaning, the value, the significance, and the importance of the activity that you're doing, even though it might not be fun, it might not be enjoyable, the meaning that lies within it will provide you the energy, enthusiasm, and the positivity to do the job with optimism and confidence. When it comes to Mishal and Otzafan, what was their attitude? They didn't feel that they're missing the party. They felt they were making the party. They were preserving the party. They were allowing the party to happen. They literally were the ones making it. They were integral to the party itself. Text number 7 here from the Rebbe. It emerges that in doing the service, Mishal and Otzafan were not removed from rejoicing in the Mishkan. taking Nadav and Avihu out of the Mishkan was how they took part in the Simcha. That was their role. That was their job in the Simcha. They were not equal to their friends in participating in the Simcha. They had a greater role than their friends in participating in the Simcha because they actually made it happen. They allowed for the inauguration to take place. You could apply the same argument, the same mindset to volunteering to do security for your shul. Now it happens to be in our shul, we have paid security. There's a wonderful grant from the Federation that helps us out with this, but not all communities are so lucky. There are many communities where people from the shul itself have to volunteer. There's a rotation basis and actually miss part of the davening. Maybe 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, whatever it is, whatever your duty is for that particular day, wherever you're stationed. And you actually miss out on davening. What does this teach us? Don't look at it as if you're missing out on davening. Absolutely not. You are actually allowing the entire shul to daven. In that sense, you're taking part in the davening to a certain degree, even more than the people who are actually inside the shul. Because without you, it simply would not happen, and you're 100% part of that service. A similar idea the Rebbe shared regarding Yom Kippur. Where is the place to be on Yom Kippur? In a shul, fasting, holding a machzor, reading from it, and participating with the entire community. However, there are many mothers, especially young mothers, who are not able to do so. They either are in the children's program, or they might be sitting at home making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for their kids and are barely even able to open the machzor. And they may feel second rate. They may feel like we're missing out. Everyone is in shul, and look what I'm doing here. The Rebbe commented on such women that not only should they not feel bad, but they have equal status, if not greater status, than the Kohen Gadol, than the high priest himself, who actually goes into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur to perform the service. Because what is the mother doing? She is taking care of the next generation. She is ensuring that there's a Jewish future. Without the mothers who make peanut butter sandwiches for their kids on Yom Kippur, there will be no Yom Kippur. There will be no next generation. So these mothers literally are greater than the Kohen Gadol, than the high priest on Yom Kippur itself by what they're doing. Is the mother doing something different than the Kohen Gadol? Yes. Is the volunteer security doing something different than what the person is doing in shul? Absolutely. Were Mishal and El-Safan doing something radically different than what all the rest of the Jews were doing during the inauguration? Yes. But not only did it not have less meaning, you could argue it had even more meaning. Now, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the story of Viktor Frankl, the great Jewish psychiatrist who went through the concentration camps and survived the Holocaust and wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. What he concluded from this entire experience is that the most critical and important thing for a human being to have is meaning in life. If you have meaning in life, you can survive any experience in any circumstance because meaning is the very fuel and energy of life itself. He says if a person can find meaning in any given significant circumstance, that could provide for a person something even more powerful than clear and obvious pleasure. If a person can find the meaning in the experience, the value that they get out of it is so much more greater than the more obvious pleasure that they might get out of different experiences. The question that you have to ask yourself is, what is my role in any given scenario and situation in life? Am I a celebrator or am I a preserver? Is my role at this time to do an active mitzvah? Or is my role right now at this moment in time to do a passive mitzvah? Is God calling on me to do an action which is celebratory, or is God calling on me to refrain from doing something because that is what is going to preserve my Judaism and the Judaism for every generation and continue on the chain? When it comes to celebrating action-oriented mitzvahs, one may have a more obvious pleasure, but we have to recognize that both are vital, critical, and meaningful. The Alter Rebbe gives an interesting parallel that can help us appreciate the value, the importance, and the meaning of even those passive mitzvahs when we are called to refrain from doing an action. So text number 10, the Alter Rebbe. When a human king wishes to occupy a pleasant living space, he first instructs the chambers to be cleared from all filth and disarray, and thereafter nice furniture, a bed, table, chair, and a lamp are brought in. So it is in our religious life. As it is stated, and God placed Adam in Gan Eden to work and guard it. Our sages explain to work it, these are the active mitzvahs. To guard it, these are the passive mitzvahs. In other words, the passive mitzvahs function to eradicate all evil so that there should not be any filth. The active mitzvahs are analogous to placing nice furniture in the house. Namely, they fulfill the purpose of creation to fashion a home for God in the corporal worlds. Another way of saying this is washing dishes, cleaning the dishes, putting away the dishes are not nearly as enjoyable and exciting as picking out the dishes or setting out the dishes and displaying them on the table. However, if we don't wash the dishes, if we don't clean the dishes, if we don't put away the dishes, there's simply going to be no clean dishes. There's simply not going to be that beautiful Shabbos table. We're not going to have that beautiful kitchen experience. Without it, all you have is a messy kitchen. So this answers question number 1. Their role in the celebration, this is Mishal and Etzafon, was more integral to the joy than those who were actually merrymaking. And you can find the result or meaning. If you can find the result or meaning, you can appreciate any mitzvah. Let me share you an interesting story that really makes this point. So Rabbi Nachman Sudak, he was the head Chabad emissary to Great Britain. And a number of years ago, he was given the Order of the British Empire Award. This is the second highest award that can given to be a British citizen, and it is presented to you by the Queen herself. So he tells the story that he's in the palace, waiting for the ceremony to begin, and he notices a tissue on the floor of the palace. He bends down to pick it up, and all of a sudden, one of the members of the staff or the guards call out, "This is the royal palace. Only Her Majesty's servants may clean it." Rabbi Sudak said, I learned a very powerful message when it comes to my relationship with God and how I am meant to serve Him. We have to look at the world as God's royal palace. Cleaning the palace is a royal service given only to royal servants. Cleaning the palace is an honor. Is cleaning the palace fun? No. But there's meaning and value to it. It's an honor to be able to do it. Similarly, there be mitzvahs that in our life that are not as enjoyable, that are not as fun, they're not as entertaining. But when we recognize we are royal servants, given the opportunity to clean the royal palace, right? There's an honor, there's a meaning, there's a significance, there's a value to it. And we should be able to do it with pride. So this story of Mishal and Otzafon is really the story of us. That just as Mishal and Otzafon were in the midst of a tremendous celebration, but they were called out. They had to do a task that wasn't attractive and that wasn't desirable, but it had to be done. So too, there are so many mitzvahs in our lives that we love and enjoy and have so much fun with. But from time to time, we are called upon to refrain from doing certain things or to engage in a task that we don't enjoy. Maybe it's cleaning for chametz. Maybe it's avoiding kosher food. Maybe it's not driving on Shabbos, whatever the task is. We are called upon to do this task. It may be less pleasurable and enjoyable to what we've been doing previously, but we recognize that what we're doing is more important, right? It's more valuable. If in our efforts to create a home for God in this world, at times we celebrate and sometimes we preserve, but both are entirely essential. It's nice to be at the party. It's more fun to be at the party. But sometimes life takes us on a different path, and we have to recognize its value and do it with joy. Again, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, look beyond your irritation and ask yourself, what is my role right now? Is it to celebrate or is it to preserve? When we recognize the meaning in that preservation, we'll do it with the same joy, the same satisfaction, the same happiness as we would any other mitzvah. Thank you so much for joining us for our weekly Torah studies class. I hope you'll join us next week on Zoom, 7:30 p.m. for next week's class. But I also want to remind everyone that our next 6-week JLI course is going to begin on Wednesday evening, April 28th. The course is called This Can Happen. It's all about one of the most fundamental principles within Judaism, the coming of Mashiach. A person might say, no way, impossible. Look at the state that the world is today. There is no way that the world is going to be transformed to be peaceful, blissful, holy, spiritual, and godly in a messianic era. It may happen, but not very soon. We are going to present the Torah perspective that absolutely this can happen. And if we open up our eyes, we'll be able to see the messianic transformation that the world is undergoing right now and today. So this can happen, a credible case for feeling good about the future. The early bird discount to sign up concludes on April 21st. Go to shulcenter.org. You can sign up. All the information is there. I hope you will join us as well. Have a fabulous and wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Be well.